Extremely useless megaprojects in the world. If you sometimes wonder where your tax dollars end up, we've got the answer for you. Failed, outrageously expensive megaprojects. Yeah, that's right. Megaprojects are often viewed as ambitious feats of engineering and architecture that showcase the potential of human ingenuity. However, not all megaprojects are created equal. Some are doomed to fail from the start, while others end up being nothing more than white elephants. Today, we have listed for you some of these useless megaprojects. From a never-used airport in Spain to a nuclear waste repository in Nevada, these projects serve as cautionary tales of what can happen when grand plans go awry. You'll be downright shocked at what you see, but number one is way above your imagination, so watch till the end to find out. 5. Ciudad Real Central Airport, Spain, $1.2 billion. Ciudad Real International Airport is located south of Ciudad Real in Spain. After costing over €1 million to build, the airport opened in 2009. It closed 3 years later, having hosted only 2 low-cost carriers, the flights of one subsidized by the Spanish government. After years of empty facilities falling into disrepair, the facility has reinvented itself as a maintenance and storage center, hosting aircraft from all over the world during the COVID pandemic. Opened in 2009 amidst a construction boom, Ciudad Real International Airport was initially intended to take some of the traffic from Madrid-Barajas, despite being located about 220 kilometers to the south. Its passenger terminal was designed to initially handle 2 million passengers per year, 10 if planned expansions had been completed. However, the billion-euro project only stayed open for 3 years. During that time, it only ever saw the service of 2 operators, the low-cost outfits of Ryanair and Vueling. Shortly after it shut down, the airport began to fall into disrepair. It was then put up for sale at a price of €89 million, approximately $95 million. Meanwhile, no investor wanted to pay the requested amount. Several bids were rejected by the Spanish commercial court, including one for €10,000, submitted by a consortium of British and Asian investors who wanted to turn it into an entry point for Chinese companies. In the end, the airport was sold for €56.2 million to Ciudad Real International Airport SL. The airfield and its single 4,100-meter-long runway reopened in September 2019. However, there are no scheduled passenger services to or from the airport. Instead, it has become a maintenance and storage facility. Irish company Direct Aero Services opened a maintenance base at the airport, and Spanish firm Jet Aircraft Services also started to run a dismantling service. The month of May 2020 saw cargo flights arrive from Guangzhou in China, bringing medical equipment to help fight the pandemic. While being a ghost airport would be bad for business on other occasions, having lots of free storage space and quiet runways is not necessarily a negative when the world needs places to park its planes. Due to its arid climate and probably favorable economics, the airport became one of the preferred storage facilities for aircraft during the global health crisis. Spanish carriers such as Vueling and Iberia sent their aircraft to Ciudad Real as they parked their fleets. However, the airport has also long-term hosted deliveries of South African, Aer Lingus, Virgin Atlantic, and even far-off visitors such as Hong Kong flag carrier Cathay Pacific. Ciudad Real has also become the final resting place for some high-profile retirees, such as Virgin Atlantic's Star Wars-themed Boeing 747 named the Falcon. Due to its long runway, the airport is capable of receiving both the Queen of the Skies and the Airbus A380. While the project had a short commercial aviation history, it has managed to find a new lease on life in the modern era. Still, stakeholders would have hoped it would become a Spanish industry mainstay ahead of its opening in 2009. 4. New South China Mall, $1.3 billion. Dongguan, China can brag about being home to one of the world's largest malls when measured by total leasable area, with a structure over 2 times the size of the Mall of America in Bloomington, Minnesota. However, shortly after opening, the South China Mall was designated a ghost mall, with less than 1% of its space occupied. One mistake made during the planning phase regarding the choice of location possibly doomed the project before the foundation was even laid. The South China Mall was built on former farmland in the Wangjiang district, 34 miles from Dongguan city center, with no direct public transport links. The surrounding area is also home to a poorer population, meaning the high-priced offerings at the mall were largely out of their price range. The nearby regions are Shenzhen and Guangzhou, and the area offers so many shopping centers that residents were just not tempted to make the journey to the new location. In 2005, the South China Mall hosted its official opening. The total area available to rent was 659,612 square meters, and it had the capacity for about 2,350 retail premises. To make the shopping center unique and attractive for both local and international visitors, it was divided into 7 zones, each dedicated to a different area of the world: Amsterdam, Paris, Rome, Venice, Egypt, the Caribbean, and California. Following its spectacular failure after its opening in December 2006, the owner, Hu Guirong's Dongguan Sanyang Yinghe Investment and Development Company, decided to sell a controlling interest in the mall. The buyer was Founder Group, part of Peking University. In September of the following year, the name of the center changed to the New South China Mall Living City, which was part of a makeover attempt the owners hoped would reinvent the site and improve business. For 10 years, less than 10% of the mall was occupied by lessees. In 2011, this figure dropped to a mere 1%. It had some visitors thanks to McDonald's, KFC, Pizza Hut, an IMAX movie theater, and a go-kart track. However, every year, staff found it increasingly difficult to maintain the shopping center. The decorations inside began to fade, and almost 99% of the lots remained empty. But there might still be hope for the South China Mall. In recent years, the developers decided to renovate the shopping center to attract the Chinese middle class rather than the upper class, as had been the previous intention. It has been modernized, and this makeover seems to be working, as both customers and tenants are filling up the building, with the occupancy rate at 91% as of 2020. Other projects intended to draw even more people to the location include building a globe-shaped IMAX cinema, as well as other entertainment attractions for children, such as a theme park and a marine mammal zoo. But will that be enough to turn the multi-billion-dollar project to profitability? Only time will tell. By the way, did you know that New South China Mall also made it to the list of insanely expensive construction mistakes in the world? Well, if you didn't, worry less. We have a whole video just for you. Check out the link in the description below to find out other developments apart from this mall that were deemed a complete waste of money. 3. Bataan Nuclear Power Plant, Philippines, $2.2 billion. The Bataan Nuclear Power Plant is an interesting case study of nuclear energy. Completed back in the 1980s and costing $2.2 billion, the plant currently stands in Morong, Bataan, atop Napo Point, which overlooks the West Philippine Sea. However, it never achieved its goal of generating 623 megawatts of electricity. Bataan is currently the only nuclear power plant in the Philippines, and more interestingly, was still the only nuclear power plant in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations as of 2014. Nuclear energy first came to the forefront of Philippine politics back in the 1950s, when the US gave the Philippines a nuclear fission reactor. The government then formally established a nuclear program in 1958 under the Philippine Atomic Energy Commission. The Bataan nuclear plant was then proposed in the 1960s and approved under the Marcos regime in July of 1973. The final contract was given to Westinghouse Electric. The project was completed in 1984. Before, during, and after the construction of the project, this power plant was surrounded by controversy. From President Marcos' connection to Westinghouse, to the dispute between General Electric and Westinghouse, to issues of following protocol during and after construction, the multi-billion-dollar project faced many issues that led to criminal charges being brought against Westinghouse. The whole controversy was described in detail 2 years after the plant's completion. One of the biggest controversies was the Marcos connection with Westinghouse. First, Marcos requested that the National Power Company, the government-owned electric utility, negotiate a deal to buy 2 nuclear reactors. Westinghouse used connections to Marcos to strike the deal. Already known to be more expensive than other options, the Westinghouse contract jumped from $650 million for only 1 reactor to $2.2 billion. Later, evidence of large sums of money going to President Marcos himself was found. Westinghouse denied corruption accusations. Another controversy was how Westinghouse was able to gain the contract over General Electric. It is documented that National Power was negotiating with General Electric before Westinghouse came into the picture. However, once the connections between Westinghouse and the Marcos regime were established by Hermino Decini, a friend of the president himself, General Electric appeared to be strung along as though they were still in contention, even though they were actually not. There's documentation that contract negotiations began before General Electric could pitch its proposal to the government. Additionally, there were issues during and after the construction of how Ibasco's services, hired for safety testing, were observing protocol. Libero Ibe, Marcos' top nuclear expert, questioned Ibasco's work of checking the siting. He is documented as saying that he was offered bribes to approve the site for construction, and, reluctantly, did end up issuing the construction permit in 1979. After the construction was completed in 1984, William Albert, an advisor from the International Atomic Energy Agency, was brought in by the new Aquino government to do inspections. Albert brought up issues of welding, working hours, base plates, pipe hangers, water values, and transmission cables. He attributed all these shortcomings to quality control. Even though these issues were brought up to National Power, who had the final say whether the plant was to be operable or not, there is no evidence that the structural issues were dealt with appropriately. In recent times, the government has been working on reviving the project, but it still faces a multitude of opposing views from the locals, energy experts, and environmentalists. 2. Naypyidaw Ghost City, Myanmar, $4 billion. Naypyidaw is located near Pianmana, about 320 kilometers north of the old capital Yangon in Myanmar. In February 2021, Myanmar got back in the headlines following a military takeover. The coup was staged as a new session of parliament was set to open in the country's capital, Naypyidaw, a city unlike any other. Burmese for Abode of the King, Naypyidaw emerged from the virgin forest just 200 miles north of the old capital, Yangon, formerly Rangoon, in 2005, and quickly staked its claim for the title of World's Weirdest City, notable for its colossal scale and relative lack of residents. Construction, involving at least 25 separate firms, actually started in 2002, but the world knew nothing of it until Myanmar's military rulers announced the overnight transfer of government offices on November 6, 2005. The exact timing of the declaration was reportedly chosen by the personal astrologers of then-dictator Senior General Than Shwe. The city remained nameless for a year, but after a massive military parade on the first anniversary of the move, held in the shadow of 3 enormous statues of Kings Anorata, Bayanong, and Alongpaya, considered the 3 greatest monarchs in the nation's history, the Naypyidaw moniker was unveiled. So, just how big is it? Estimates have put the figure at 2,723 square miles, which, if accurate, would make it 4 times bigger than London and 6 times the size of New York City. It has even been said that the vastness of Naypyidaw can only be comprehended from space. Back in 2011, when the Telegraph was granted a visit, One Western diplomat told the reporter, "The only real way to get a sense of this place is from Google Earth. Then you see the distance between the buildings, set far apart to survive air raids." Questionable official figures claim its population is 924,608, which, even if true, adds up to a population density of just 339.5 per square mile. That's minuscule for a major city. The corresponding figure for London, for example, is 14,500. For Paris, it's 53,000. For Manila, among the most densely populated cities on the planet, it's 108,000. Clearly, there's room to breathe here. The city has been described as an empty city with barely a car on the road and not a crowd to be seen. All of Naypyidaw's roads eventually lead to Myanmar's most powerful seat, but there is only desolation along the way. The only signs of life along mile after mile of empty highways are the straw-hatted street sweepers. The battle against the dust amounts to an unceasing demonstration that remoteness provides no insulation against reality. Spare a thought for those street sweepers. Some of the highways are huge, with as many as 20 lanes but no traffic. Can you imagine that? Rumor has it that the scale was devised so aircraft could use them as emergency runways in the events of protest or revolution. Top Gear's 2014 Burma special poked fun at the barren motorways, with the presenters playing football on them and joking about the non-existent rush hour. Landmarks include the 99-meter Upatasanti Pagoda, which houses a Buddha tooth relic from China. For those fed up with the sorts of crowds you can usually expect at temples in neighboring Thailand, or even Myanmar's tourist honeypot of Bataan, it's perfect. There are also several golf courses, a few parks, and a zoo, as well as beautifully manicured roundabouts topped with sculptures of flowers. Restaurants include Cafe Flight, which occupies a salvaged airplane. Beyond that, however, there's really just grandiose civic architecture to admire. Despite the distinct lack of attractions, there's no shortage of tourist accommodation, mostly found in the romantic-sounding hotel zone overlooking a man-made lake on the outskirts of the city. Hotels include one from the international chain Hilton, which has rooms from around £70 a night and the largest outdoor pool in the city. But the big question remains, why were countless billions spent building it? Critics have called it a vanity project, the sole idea of Dan Shui, who apparently, with the help of his astrologers, foresaw bloodshed and natural disaster in Yangon. More sympathetic observers point to its logical geographical position, closer to the center of the country and Yangon's creaking infrastructure. 1. The Forest City, Malaysia. $100 billion. Forest City is an integrated residential development and private town located in Iskandar Puteri in Johor, Malaysia. In recent times, the concept of an eco-friendly city has become more prevalent over the years, but this megacity has been left a ghost town for years. Dubbed the Forest City, it was meant to be this big Chinese initiative when it was first unveiled, but it has been a ghost town for years. The Malaysian-based coastal city, which cost $100 billion to make, was designed to house up to 1 million people and includes a golf course, water park, and restaurants. Building work on the project first began in 2016, but it has been far from plain sailing since then. According to the BBC, only around 15% of Forest City has been built, with just 1% of what has been built being occupied. Despite things looking pretty bleak now, the Chinese property developer, Country Garden, is optimistic that the town will eventually be finished. However, they are facing debts of almost $200 billion, leaving many skeptical that it will even reach close to the finish line. But with 15% of the city finished, why are just 1% of the buildings occupied? The BBC states that Forest City was aimed at selling properties in Malaysia to Chinese buyers, essentially acting as a home away from home. But prices have spiraled out of control, with homes in Malaysia now out of many people's price range. The best that locals can hope for is for someone wealthier to purchase a home in Forest City, as renting from them is a more viable option. And like every project, the pandemic did not help things, as it ultimately stopped the building process for a period of time. Furthermore, it appears that folks just don't want to buy the flats, which is a bit of a problem for the city developers. Essentially, money from sales of flats was intended to fund the rest of Forest City. Forest City has also suffered from being a political football since its launch, something Country Garden may well not have anticipated. Despite its vast scale, the first time locals heard about Forest City was in 2014, when fishermen woke up one day to find barges dumping sand off the coast. Newspapers dug into the story, revealing that Country Garden's main partner was none other than the Sultan of Johor State, Ibrahim Ismail. The tie made sense. Many businesses take on Johor royals as partners, benefiting from the influence they wield in the state. The Malaysian government is also bent on transforming southern Johor into a new economic hub, Shenzhen, to Singapore's Hong Kong. The city was made a duty-free zone. When further investigations also revealed rushed environmental reviews, it took diplomatic protests from Singapore for the central government to intervene and ensure the proper process was followed. However, things began to shift when the Malaysian government's grip on power loosened. Rocked by the world's largest corruption scandal, the China-linked Malaysia Development Berhad, voters turned against it. And at 93 years old, former Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad exited retirement to lead an opposition filled with former opponents, previously imprisoned under his watch, against a government coalition he once led for 22 years. Forest City became one of Mahathir's favorite targets. In vain against government corruption and waste, he accused the government of planning to sell out Malaysia to foreigners. Most provocatively, he claimed that the thousands of mainly Chinese buyers of Forest City apartments would be allowed to settle, become Malaysian citizens, and vote in its elections. In a country where ethnically Chinese make up 23% of the citizenry and are often stereotyped as wielding undue political influence due to their wealth, the claim was explosive. After his shock triumph in the 2018 elections, then Prime Minister Mahathir followed through on his threats, declaring that foreigners would not be allowed to buy property in Forest City. Despite legal challenges, the announcement apparently hit Forest City sales hard. Should Country Garden go bankrupt, it's uncertain what will happen to Forest City. At that point, the Malaysian government could face the unpalatable option of a potential bailout by the Chinese government, leaving a chunk of Malaysian land in Beijing's hands. Alternatively, it could step in itself, becoming the proud proprietor of what the developers still proclaim to be a prime model for future cities. And that's it from us today. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to click on the subscribe icon below. Also, give us a like, share the video, and remember to turn on the notification bell for timely updates of our latest uploads. Until next time, thank you for watching.